good, all of you beautiful people out there? How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, the podcast where we talk everything National Football League in season, off season. It does not matter because it is football. I am your host, Double Diesel, and welcome to this Week 9 recap. A recap of a crazy-ass Week 9 here on the 2023 National Football League season. Before we dive into the video, like always, I will like to ask, if you have not done so already, to please like, subscribe, and share the video if you have not done so already. And if you know anybody that enjoys this kind of content and you'd like to share that with them, that'd be greatly appreciated. Help us get more eyeballs onto the product and help us get us out there into the algorithm a little more, boost our exposure a little bit. So if you've not done so already and like to, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you'd like to go support the channel, go support it on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. That would be greatly appreciated. But let's dive into the show. Man, like I said at the start of this, Week 9 was insane. A lot of crazy ass things that happened on Sunday that we need to talk about literally all day as the international series kicked back up. This time they're doing back-to-back games in Germany. This week was the first game in Germany, and that is the first game we're going to be talking about. German fans were treated to an incredible matchup, at least on paper. That is the Miami Dolphins taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to start with the victors in this first. That is the Kansas City Chiefs. Because coming out of this game, I don't really know how to view either team. As far as the Chiefs go, first half of this game, it looked like it was going to be a complete rout. Chiefs took a big 21-0 lead in the first half of this game. 2 offensive touchdowns. 1 touchdown when the Dolphins were driving down the field, and then Trent McDuffie made an incredible play to strip Tyreek Hill. Mike Edwards picked it up, pitched it back to Brian Cook, and he just ran it down the sideline for a touchdown. That was incredible to see. And it just looked like it was going to be a Kansas City Chief rout. And we were going to have a lot of talking points in regards to the Miami Dolphins. And it was only a matter of time until the Kansas City Chiefs were just going to officially, stomp on the neck a little more, apply more pressure to the neck, and just demolish the Miami Dolphins. Except that never happened. In fact, the Kansas City Chiefs went completely scoreless in the entire second half. It was enough for them to hold on and win, because that Kansas City defense has really been the saving grace of this team. Steve Spagnuolo has done an amazing job with this defense, an incredibly young defense, but they are feisty, they're fast, they're physical, they make huge plays when they need to, and, that really hasn't been the theme with the Kansas City Chiefs the past few years. It's really been Mahomes and the offense and putting 30 points a game, and the defense doesn't really have to do that much because the offense is going to bail them out. This year, the Chiefs defense has been the thing keeping this Chiefs team afloat. It really has, for the most part. I don't want to say keeping them afloat, but it really has. They've won a lot of games this year because of how well that defense has been playing. And they've needed it because, and we kind of saw it last week in Denver, and we saw it again in the second half of this week's game. The Kansas City Chiefs offensively do not look like the Chiefs teams we've seen from the past few years. And a lot of people wonder why, because it's still Andy Reid. It's still, for the most part, Andy Reid. His offensive system, for the most part. It's still Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce is still playing as well as he ever did. He even has the power of Taylor Swift on his side. So, you'd figure they would still beat the Chiefs. And yet they haven't. And there's a couple things that I theorize as to why that is. One is they don't really have anybody in the receiver room, as far as wide receivers go, that truly scare you. Like, from a pure wide receiver standpoint, they might have one of the worst groups in the NFL. And that's saying a lot, considering, there are a lot of bad teams that have bad receiver rooms in the league, i.e. New England, or what's another fucking really bad team? The Panthers have another receiver room that's really, really bad. And the Chiefs are like right in the mix of all of that because, Sky Moore hasn't panned out the way they thought they would. MVS, he's a speed guy that they don't even use that much, so it almost doesn't even matter. Kadarius Toney is just sort of blah. They're hoping Rashee Rice can be something, and he has made a lot of really good plays. He has really stunned me for the most part because I was not a Rashee Rice guy when he was coming out of SMU. But he has made a lot of really nice plays, had a lot of good flashes, so they're hoping that, maybe he can be something, but that's a big, hope. And other than that, they don't really have anybody to get some serious production. And, it really is a sign of they're missing Tyreek Hill. And even to an extent, missing Juju Smith-Schuster because he at least was able to give them something last year from the receiver spot. But yeah, that's one thing. And the other thing that we need to talk about that I think they're missing is Eric Bieniemy. Now, he was a guy that when Mahomes first got there, there was a lot of talks that he should be candidate number one as far as future head coaches. And then that kind of died down as the years went on, as people were like, well, how much of it is Eric Bieniemy and how much of it is actually Andy Reid's offense? Well, Eric Bieniemy has gone to Washington, and I think he's done a phenomenal job with that offense and with Sam Howell, and he's done a really good job, and he's proven that, yes, he absolutely should be in consideration to be a head coach in the future. But, whatever it is you can say, whether it's actually Bieniemy's offense or not, he clearly had some kind of say as far as the crazy batshit plays that Kansas City would always run with, like, these crazy everyone would motion at once, or the fucking ring around the rosy that they did on a Monday night against the Raiders, if y'all remember that. Like, this crazy ass fun shit like that he clearly had an input in that would just confuse the hell out of everybody and run plays that should not work, and they end up working every single time. All of a sudden, Bieniemy leaves, and you don't really see that anymore. You haven't seen that at all this year. And that's kind of Bieniemy's influence. And he clearly brought some kind of energy to that offense that just seems to be lacking. And, I really thought the Chiefs were going to make a move for a receiver at the deadline. I was stunned when they didn't. I figured they were going to try and make a move for Hopkins, or, try and take a swing at Devontae Adams, or a swing at Mike Evans or T. Higgins or somebody, just somebody. Instead, they just sat on their hands and didn't do anything, and this is the crew they're going to be rocking with for the rest of the year. Now, I'm not worried about them not making the playoffs because they're going to win their division, because the rest of their division is just they can't compete with the Chiefs, even if they're not as explosive as they were in years past. But at the end of the day, they're still the Chiefs. They're still playing in the AFC West that is not really good. They're not very good at all right now. But I do have concerns on whether or not this team is good enough to make it to and win the Super Bowl. That is something that I'm a little concerned about, to say the least. So that's Kansas City. And then as far as Miami goes, they did fight back in the second half after getting skunked in the first half. They did make it a little bit of a game. They got a big touchdown to Cedric Wilson. They got a huge turnover that immediately led to a Raheem Mostert rushing touchdown. But, all of a sudden they were starting to get momentum, and then they just reverted back to those first half Dolphins where all of a sudden they couldn't move the ball that well. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. They couldn't put points on the board. And then they had a chance to win it late on the last drive. And, two back-to-back huge runs by Raheem Mostert brought them from within their own 20 to just outside the Kansas City red zone. And then all of a sudden, incomplete pass, back to back to back. And then 4th and 10 comes, game on the line, and Tua bobbles the snap, falls on it, but it was 4th down, so that was the game. And with that, the Miami Dolphins, they did kind of save face a little bit with how they performed in the third quarter, but the Miami Dolphins have now officially entered the who have you really beaten team. I kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago after they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. But, this week after Kansas City, this was a huge test for them. Was, all right, how are they going to perform and how are they going to play when they're actually in the face of an opponent that is weaker than in years past, but are still one of the premier teams of the AFC? How are they going to look in that situation? And they did not look good outside of, like I said, outside of that third quarter. They really couldn't do much of anything, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So it's a matter of, is that going to haunt this team later down the road? Can they figure something out? Can they actually put something together where they can actually compete? Because, you look at this team on paper, you look at the talent this team has, there's no reason as to why they can't compete with these elites or higher tier teams. There's no reason why they can't. But for some reason, every time they do, whether it's the Bills, whether it's the Chiefs, whether it's the Eagles, when they face against a team that is going to be playing deep into January, all of a sudden they just shrivel up. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's about. I don't know if it's something that can be fixed. I don't know what to make of that. And it's a reason why all of a sudden the Miami Dolphins, a team that I viewed as a team that can absolutely assert itself as one of the elites of the league, forget just the AFC, of the league, and all of a sudden they go from they are legit Super Bowl caliber, Super Bowl favorites to, if they can't beat good teams, they're going to get one and done in the wild card round. And that is a fact. So that's really all it is as far as that goes. I didn't really... I just walked out of this game with more questions about both participants rather than any clear answers as to what the rest of the year is going to be for them. It's really what it is. All right, next game we're going to talk about. Now we're getting into the afternoon games. First game I want to talk about is Vikings-Falcons. Now, I'll get the Falcons out of the way because I didn't really learn anything. We didn't really learn anything about the Atlanta Falcons in this game. Though I will say Taylor Heineke absolutely looks better running this offense than Desmond Ridder did, which, granted, he didn't have to do much because Desmond Ridder was an active obstacle for this team. But Heineke came in, looked relatively well. And, yeah, it's a team that still has a abundance of highly drafted talent that they still don't really use. Obviously Kyle Pitts is that, but, Bijan Robinson, I get Tyler Algier is a really good running back, and I love Tyler Algier. But it goes back to, you spent the 8th overall pick on Bijan Robinson, and you don't even put him in the game on goal line situations. Like, in goal-to-go situations, he's not even in the game, and you barely have used him that much these past few weeks, and it's like, if you're not going to utilize him that much, then why'd you spend the 8th overall pick on him? So that's just sort of that as far as Atlanta goes. But the main reason that I wanted to talk about this game is because there is a much bigger storyline that we did not anticipate to be that big of a storyline coming out of this game. Obviously, the trade deadline happening this past Tuesday. One of the big trades, and one of the trades I talked about on this show, recapping the trade deadline, was the trading of Josh Dobbs to the Minnesota Vikings from the Arizona Cardinals in the wake of Kirk Cousins blowing out his Achilles and being out for the remainder of the season. But Josh Dobbs went into Sunday as the team's backup, which makes sense. He just arrived there. He hadn't been in the building for more than 4 days, and, well, they wanted to see what they had in Jaron Hall, who is a rookie they drafted at BYU. And Jaron Hall, played the first couple drives and actually looked really good. I liked what they had with Jaron Hall. He has some kind of athletic tools to work with, so I thought he looked relatively well and relatively well prepared. And then he got knocked out of the game early on with a concussion. And in comes Josh Dobbs. Like I said, hadn't been with the team for more than 4 days. And now all of a sudden he has to go in to play quarterback for a team that he barely knows the playbook for. Sound familiar? It sounds like what happened when he arrived at Arizona at the start of the year. Because remember, this is Josh Dobbs' third team this season. He was with the Browns for most of training camp, got cut, got picked up by the Cardinals a week out from their home opener. Or was it 2 weeks out? I didn't matter. It was like a week or 2 weeks out from their home opener and was made the starter when he had just arrived and comes in and plays well. And, he comes in, plays valiantly, helps them to a huge upset win over the Dallas Cowboys. They looked like a semi-competent team with the help of Josh Dobbs at quarterback. And then, it started to falter as the weeks went on. They decided to not play him anymore. They traded him to Minnesota, comes in on 4 days' notice, and I'm not going to say he set the world on fire, but he killed it, man. He fucking killed it. He had a really cool touchdown run in the middle of this game. He looked comfortable all of a sudden. It's like, oh my God. He's probably like, oh my God, I have semi-talented players around me. This is incredible. And then last drive, down 4, I think, with a chance to go down the field and win the game, he, again, with a team that he barely knows, with teammates he barely knows or is familiar with, and drives them down the field and scores the game-winning touchdown to give the Vikings the win. What the hell, man? All of a sudden it kind of became a joke in the middle of the year where we were all sort of talking about, like, oh, Josh Dobbs is like, he's doing like a Ryan Fitzpatrick career speed run where he's just going through all these different teams as fast as humanly possible. And he is. Like, this is, I don't know how many teams he's already been on, but this is his, third team this year. I think this is his fifth team in 2 or 3 seasons. And the 2 times he's asked to come in on short notice, he comes in and performs better than most guys that had all a training camp or all season to prepare and learn the playbook. It really is like, wow, man. So now all of a sudden, a Vikings team that looked dead in the water because they had worked their way back to 500, and then Kirk gets hurt, and now all of a sudden everything looks lost. Trade for Josh Dobbs. What the hell's in my eye? Okay. Something got in my eye just now, but what was I talking about? So anyway, it's he comes in on a whim for the second time this year and puts the team on his back when nobody expects him to. And it really is an incredible, incredible story. And that's really the main thing I wanted to talk about was Josh Dobbs is insane for what he's done this year. You know what the best way to follow up, really awesome, incredible feel-good story like that is? Talk about a fucking bludgeoning. Seahawks at Ravens. Seahawks, the only thing really to talk about them in this regard is they're just not ready yet. They're a really good team. They're a really good team that is able to compete for a playoff spot. But as far as, competing for Super Bowls and all that stuff and making deep playoff runs, they're just not there yet. Um, they're like another year or two away. They're, a couple more pieces away from really taking that next step and really competing. So that's really it. They're just not there yet. But a team that is there is the team that beat them, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Is it crazy for me to say that the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in football right now? Because, hold on, I'm pulling up the box score right now. And I'm pulling that up because, when you talk about the Ravens and when they have dominant wins like this, you usually think of, Lamar probably went off, or, Zay Flowers had his breakout game, or Mark Andrews went for a tight end trifecta, and, the defense went off, which they did. They absolutely did. But offensively, you think it's the usual suspects that came through and really performed at a high level to help the Baltimore Ravens win. But I did not have Keaton Mitchell on my Baltimore Raven bingo card in this game. Keaton Mitchell, you're probably wondering, who the hell is a Keaton Mitchell? Well, he is an undrafted rookie running back out of East Carolina. And he came in for a running back room that's been relatively banged up, and they decided to put him in there on some carries. And all of a sudden, he started getting some heat going, and they were just like, you know what, he's starting to get going. He's becoming the hot hand. Let's feed him the rock, because he's the hot hand right now. And boy howdy, was he the hot hand. 9 carries for 138 yards and a touchdown run, a long touchdown run. He got 138 yards on 9 carries. That's 15.3 yards per carry. What the fuck? What the hell? And look, Seattle's defense over the past few years and this year have not really had the greatest run defense in the world. But even then, you look at the rest of these guys, Lamar himself only had 60 carries, or 60 yards on 10 carries. Gus Edwards only had 52 yards on 5 carries. And Justice Hill only had 40 yards on 13 carries. Justice Hill had the most carries out of all these guys, and he only got 40 yards. He averaged 3 yards a carry. Keaton Mitchell just said, fuck this. This is my room now, at least for today. And he just went the hell off. So we now know, okay, he's going to be playing for sure. He's probably going to get starter reps next week. That feels confident in saying. And if he has another repeat performance like that, then he's the running back for the rest of the year. Fuck running back by committee. If he keeps doing that every game, Gus will bring you in if he gets hurt. Justice, we'll keep you on the bench for a little while. This is Keaton Mitchell's show if he keeps performing like this. But back to the Ravens as a whole. Lamar did not have the best game today. This was far from his best effort. And even then, they still won 37-3. They still dominated in this game. And it just is this team has proven that even when they're not playing all that perfect, they're still really fucking good. And it makes on games where they are playing perfect, it makes them borderline unstoppable. So they have officially entered the elite caliber tier of teams in the NFL and should absolutely be Super Bowl favorites, and maybe even favorites to make the Super Bowl out of the AFC at least. Because, you look at this defense, which is second-ranked defense in the NFL, and they have just been suffocating teams on that side of the ball. They've gone back to, those old Ravens days with guys like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and T. Sizzle. They've gone back to that, and they're now just demolishing teams on that side of the ball. And offensively, when they are clicking on all cylinders, like I said, they're unstoppable. And it really is like it makes the idea of when they play Kansas City in the playoffs, or Buffalo, or the Bengals at some point later in the year, those games are going to be a lot of fun to watch, because it's like, wow, man, the Ravens have they're here. They have arrived. And it's like, who do you really realistically think can stop this team? Probably themselves. If anyone's going to stop this team, it's probably themselves. Maybe Cincinnati, because they're getting back on a groove, and we're going to talk about them later on in the show. But, and I didn't notice this until I watched the game. They played in the last 6 games, I think, including this one, yes. The last 6 games the Ravens have played, 4 of them have been on the road. They played 2 home games in the last 6 games. I mean, technically they were the home team in the game against the Titans in London, but that was in London, so they were technically the home team, but they weren't. But yeah, they've only played at M&T Bank Stadium twice in the last 6 games. And those 2 home games were against the Seahawks and the Detroit Lions, both of which they fucking steamrolled. And they've held their own and performed really, really well, even in games when they are on the road. So they're already really good when they're playing in your house. And then when they go back to their house to play, they're just the most terrifying team in the league. So there's really nothing else to say about the Baltimore Ravens, except they have officially asserted themselves as one of the elites of the league. And that's pretty much all there is to say about them. Alrighty, 4th game to talk about. And this is the game I'm like low-key the most excited to talk about. Bucks Texans. Let's talk about Tampa first, because they play valiantly. I mean, I say valiantly, they put up 37 points. They played really freaking good, especially on offense, And Baker Mayfield has definitely exceeded expectations on what people thought he was going to be. A lot of people assumed he was going to be a stopgap, fresh out of the Tom Brady years. And, they were going to bring him in to sort of keep the team afloat, keep him a little bit competitive, maybe. But if he doesn't work out and he flames out, then, hey, they're looking at a huge quarterback class in April, and they'll just take one there. But with how Baker has performed this year, I wouldn't be shocked if they just choose not to go that route at all. Because he's played feisty. He looks re-energized, rejuvenated. He looks like how he did back in his Cleveland days as far as attitude and the energy he had for the game. And it's been up and down at times. There have been some good games from Baker this year. There have also been some really bad games from Baker this year. But this was one of those really, really good games where he just was on it. He felt comfortable. He was playing with moxie. He's always been this kind of quarterback that he needs to have confidence in order to play well. And he has just really come back to, like I said, what he looked like back in Cleveland. And he almost won this game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I thought he was going to win the game for them because, when you drive him down the field and then score a touchdown with 46 seconds left to put your team up after you score 37 points, usually that's the sign of, hey, we just won the football game. That is, unless you're playing against the team that has a rookie quarterback that just so happens to be the son of God himself. And that man has the name CJ Stroud. I put out the tweet after this game where it said CJ Stroud is love, CJ Stroud is life, CJ Stroud is God. And that's exactly what he played like. 470 yards passing, 5 touchdown passes, including a game-winning touchdown drive where he drove the Texans down the field in under 45 seconds to win them the game. They won the game 39-37 on the back of CJ Stroud. And I'll just say this. In the pre-draft process, when he was coming out of Ohio State, I will admit, I didn't know how to view CJ Stroud. I liked aspects of his game. I was really surprised with his accuracy. I liked how calm he was and how poised he was all the time. But I still didn't want to fully latch onto it because it's the Ohio State quarterback thing. And, we know the theme and the story with quarterbacks that come out of Ohio State is because they are in a situation where everything is so easy for them and they're throwing to receivers that are constantly streaking wide ass open. It makes them hard to evaluate, and that's how you get a lot of guys that come into the league from that school and just become flops in the NFL when everything becomes harder, i.e. the Troy Smiths, the Terrell Pryors, the Justin Fields right now, though he can maybe still turn it around. And there was still kind of that feeling with CJ Stroud is like, he's still an Ohio State quarterback at the end of the day. But, you kind of got that sense in the draft process where it's like, yeah, but this guy just feels a little different. And nobody could really put their finger on as to why. Well, now we know what it is. He is a stone cold killer. I mentioned how he always seemed to be poised. He was never too high. He was never too low at Ohio State. That trait has followed into the NFL, and it's the same thing. When you have a rookie quarterback that's in that situation with 46 seconds left to go in the game after the other team just drove down the field to score what they presumed to be the game-winning touchdown, down, 4? You don't expect a rookie quarterback to come out onto the field with the demeanor as if it's the first drive of the game. You looked at how his body language was and how his face was and just how he was playing. You would have thought he thought it was still the first quarter of the game. That's how relaxed he was. That's how calm and collected and poised he was as he just picked apart a really good Buccaneer defense who's one of the best, if not the best, red zone defense in the NFL. They're the 6th ranked scoring defense in the NFL, and yet none of it fazed him. Nothing fazed him whatsoever. And it's games like that. It's games like that where you know for sure that you have your guy. Every once in a while, you'll see, because it's so hard. It's so hard for teams to find franchise quarterbacks. They only come around so often where you look at a guy and okay, this is for sure the guy to build this franchise around. This was that moment for the Houston Texans where it was this game that they came out of that and said, yep, he's the guy. A lot of people were saying, maybe he isn't. Maybe he can be. Maybe he's overhyped. Maybe he's not going to be that good in the NFL. I think even CJ Stroud's biggest supporters in the pre-draft process probably didn't expect him to look this good. I mean, it's not crazy to say he has the Offensive Rookie of the Year award on lock. He does have it on lock. Nobody else is winning that award. Not a shot in hell. So, but yeah, he's officially the guy. And that's not even talking about the rest of the guys they have on that offense that have overperformed. Nico Collins is their number one wide receiver. He's really come into his own this year. And he was the least productive receiver out of everyone in that game. They had 3 receivers in this game to have over 100 yards receiving. And Nico Collins wasn't a single one of those. Nico Collins, I think, only had 51 yards receiving. Hold on, let me pull up the box score real quick. So, hold on a moment. Yeah, so Nico Collins only had 54 yards receiving and 1 touchdown on 3 catches. Noah Brown had 6 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz had 10 grabs for a $130 and a touchdown. And Tank Dell had 6 grabs for a $114 and 2 scores of his own. And Tank Dell, by the way, is also another guy that has just been an incredible player in his rookie year. I really liked him when he came out of Houston, but even he's exceeding expectations that I had for him. This Texans team is actually good. They're really good. I did not expect them to be this competitive and to look like this early on in the rebuild process, in the first year of D'Amico and the first year of CJ Stroud. And for them to look this good, to pull out wins like this, where CJ Stroud is performing like this and not batting an eye and showing a single drop of sweat as he does it, it is a sight to see, and it was so ridiculously fun to watch. And I'm excited with what they can be for the rest of this year, because all of a sudden they're 5-4 now? Yeah, they're 5-4. Or 4-4, one of the two. I think they're 4-4 if I'm not. Yep, they're 4-4 now. They're all of a sudden they're right in the middle, because the AFC is wide open. Everybody in the AFC is just kind of in that same mix for the most part. The Texans are right in the middle of getting a wild card spot potentially. They're right in that mix. If they're able to sneak into the postseason in year one of Ryans and Stroud, this team's going to be set for the future. It's a guarantee this team is set for the future, and it can only go up from here. So, Texans fans, rejoice, because you thought it was going to be a while. You didn't know when your next guy was going to come. Your guy has come, and he is, everything has been advertised, and then some. So that's it for that. One final game that I want to talk about, and that was Sunday Night Football. Bills at Bengals. We'll talk about the Bengals first, because the Bengals are back, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, they officially came back last week against the San Francisco 49ers. A 49ers team that was missing Deebo Samuel on offense. Has dealt with some injuries, but they're still the 49ers. They're still one of the most talented and best rosters in the NFL. And the Bengals slapped them silly. A Bengals team that struggled at the beginning of the year, and, Joe Burrow wasn't looking healthy, and, there were some questions around the Bengals. Well, they have officially come back with a vengeance, and they are now back to being the Super Bowl contender that we know they are. And Joe Burrow is back to being one of the top 5 to top 3 quarterbacks that we know he is. And Sunday Night Football was a continuation of that. This team looked dominant in the first half, kind of slowed down offensively. They only scored 3 points in the entire second half of the game. But the defense held Buffalo in check throughout most of this game. And, Lou Anarumo has always been one of the more underrated defensive minds in the NFL. He's taken a defense over the past couple of years that doesn't have the biggest stars on it, or the best players, or the best, freak athletes, and yet still gets a consistent playoff caliber, championship caliber, borderline defensive performance out of them every single week. And it really is impressive to see. And I kind of had this theory, and you can tell me if I'm crazy for saying this or not, but the Cincinnati Bengals now are like what the Belichick Brady Patriots were for so many years, in the sense of they would always start out slow, like those first 4 to 6 games. They wouldn't look that good. They would still get wins, but they wouldn't look that good. They would come into the year with Super Bowl expectations, and then they would come out the gate really, really slow and people would question, what's going on with New England? Why aren't they getting it together? And then the middle of October going into November hits, and all of a sudden they kick it back into gear. They get everything going, and they go on a deep run into the postseason, and they turn into the Super Bowl championship caliber team that we knew they were coming into the season. The Cincinnati Bengals are the modern day version of that, where it's now 3 consecutive years now where they started out slow. Everyone's questioning what's going on with them. And then as the year kicks on in the middle of the year, they get everything right. They kick it in and they make a deep run into the postseason. And this year it's playing out exactly like that again. So, and I kind of said this back to when the Bengals first made the Super Bowl in 2021, where I'm like, Joe Burrow might be Tom Brady 2.0, and I don't like to throw that around very often, but it fits it so well. Like, he is the Tom Brady in this situation. And it's just, they are the modern day Patriots in that regard, in that particular sense. So yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else to say about the Cincinnati Bengals, but there is quite a bit to say about the Buffalo Bills. And Brett Coleman put out a tweet after that game that is really, really shocking. And that is, the Buffalo Bills are top 3 in play success rate, where whatever play they dial up, they're going to be successful at that play. They are the top 3 team in the league as far as successful plays run in the league. But they're 25th in scoring on those plays. And that's scoring anything. Touchdown, field goal, anything. How is it possible that a team is able to successfully run their plays consistently over and over and over, but yet can't score worth a shit? That shouldn't be possible. And I don't really know why that's the case. I don't know. I don't understand that, because you're talking about a Bills team that has the talent. They have the quarterback, they have the star wide receiver, they have the right pieces on offense to compete. They have some good guys on defense, even though the defense is banged up significantly. But still, though, this is a team that on paper should still be good enough to compete with the elites of the league. And yet, they just constantly keep getting in their own way. And a lot of that is because of what I alluded to a few weeks ago, which was this team refuses to run the football. I saw it. They had 8 total run plays against Cincinnati the whole game. The whole game, they only ran 8 run plays. And most of those run plays came in the second quarter. So they basically came into this game with a mindset of, we're just going to throw, the same mindset that they have every single game. We're just going to throw it. We're going to run our offense through Josh, and that's it. Fuck a running game, even though we drafted James Cook a couple years ago to be that. Fuck Latavius Murray. Fuck any semblance of a running back. We are going to... Josh is our running back. That's a problem. Why is your quarterback your best running back? It does not make sense. It should not make sense. Why does this team refuse to adapt? Why does this team refuse to run the ball, even in moments where it's successful? Because even when this team does run the ball and they are successful at running the ball, they just go off it anyway and just continue to just say fucking bombs ahoy. It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. And I said this a couple weeks ago after they lost the New England Patriots. I'm like, this team, I'm not going to view this team as a Super Bowl contending team until they prove otherwise. And they have yet to prove otherwise that they are. I mean, they barely beat the Bucks on Thursday night. Since they lost to the Patriots, they just barely escaped the Bucks, and then they didn't look like a competent team all that much against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday night. So I don't know what's going on. It's like they don't know anything else. They don't know anything. They only know throwing the ball. They only know Josh Allen doing crazy Josh Allen shit. That's all they know. That's all they're successful at, seemingly. And when it works, they look incredible. They look like the team that was favored to win the Super Bowl last year. But when it doesn't work, they become extremely one-dimensional, and teams are starting to realize that whether it works, whether it doesn't work, this team is one-dimensional as hell. They already have a target on their back because they're considered one of the top teams in the AFC. And now they're going to have an even bigger target because now there's a serious blueprint on how to beat them, which is, you know, they're not going to run the ball. They don't want to run the ball. Even when they run the ball, they can't do it. They're going to run this thing through Josh Allen. And it's also not that hard to stop Josh Allen because he's going to try and throw it down the field anyway. I kind of alluded to this a few weeks ago. He doesn't like throwing checkdowns every play when the defense is making him throw checkdowns. You know, he's not like that. He wants to throw the ball down the field. He wants to have the big play all of the time. And the good defenses, and there's starting to be a lot of really good defenses that are popping up, this is going to be hell for him. And every week they say they're going to adapt, they're going to change, and they just never change. Every week, I mean, they say they're going to try and lean more on the ground game, and they just never do it. And they just kind of become a lost cause at this point, and I'm sort of done with this idea that they can beat the Chiefs in January, or they can beat we damn sure know they can't beat the Bengals. I'm just done with this idea that they are going to be a serious threat to the Ravens or even the Jaguars. I don't think that, like, if the Jaguars and Bills play tomorrow, I'm picking the Jags 10 times out of 10. I don't feel comfortable with the Bills playing against the Jaguars. I mean, the Browns. I don't trust this Bills team against the Browns. Against that defense, you're telling me Jim Schwartz wouldn't look at how this Bills offense has looked and the clear blueprint that has been laid out, and Jim Schwartz wouldn't be sitting there laughing his fucking ass off, being like, okay, Miles, fucking Za'Darius, fucking every boy on this defense, go eat. Because we know how to eat, go eat. You're telling me that's not going to be the case? I've just lost all confidence in the Bills being a serious contender. I really have. I officially have. But that is going to put a wrap on the video today. Like I said, if you're not done so already, please like, subscribe, and share the video if you're not done so already and you know anybody that would enjoy this kind of content. Also, if you have not done so already, please go support me on Patreon if you'd like to at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. The link to that is in the description down below. With that being said, I am Double Diesel. Peace.